The alarm tore through the outpost before I even opened my eyes. I was on the floor of the medical bay in half a second, pulling on my boots while the emergency lights spun red across the walls. Commander Olivia Grant was already shouting into the comm unit, her voice sharp and fast. Unknown craft down, 2 kilometers north of the ridge. It's Threnai. Repeat, it's Threnai, and it's burning. I grabbed my kit and ran. There was no time to think about protocol, no time to wonder why an alien shuttle from the Threnai Dominion had dropped out of the sky so close to our human outpost. I just ran, boots hitting frozen ground, breath sharp in my chest, the smell of smoke already reaching me before I saw the wreck. The shuttle had cracked open like an egg. Silver metal, twisted and black at the edges, hissed under a thin layer of ice and snow. 2 Threnai soldiers lay near the entrance, unmoving, their pale blue skin already fading to gray. I checked them fast. Gone. No pulse, no response. My stomach turned, but I didn't stop moving. Inside the wreck, half buried under a fallen support beam, was someone else. Someone alive. She wasn't wearing armor like the guards outside. Her clothing was fine, layered in deep violet and silver, the kind of clothing that told you, even without words, that this person mattered. Her skin was a soft shade of blue, almost silver in the emergency lighting, and her long white hair was matted with blood. Her eyes opened halfway when I touched her shoulder, and even in that moment, half dying, there was something sharp and aware in the way she looked at me. "Don't move her yet," Olivia said, arriving behind me with 2 more of our team. "We don't know Threnai anatomy. We could kill her trying to help her." "She's dying anyway," I said. "Look at her side." The beam had crushed part of her lower body. Blood, dark violet, almost black, pooled beneath her, at a rate that told me exactly how little time we had. I had seen enough battlefield injuries during my years as a combat medic to know what internal bleeding looked like, no matter what color it was. We got her out from under the beam and onto a stretcher. She made a sound, somewhere between a gasp and a word, in a language I didn't understand. Her hand grabbed my wrist with surprising strength for someone so close to death. "Please," she said, in broken but clear standard English. "Please, don't let me die here." I didn't answer with words. I just moved faster. We got her back to the outpost medical bay in under 10 minutes, which felt like an hour. Our equipment wasn't built for Threnai biology. We had no idea what her blood type was, what her organs needed, what medicine would help her or kill her instantly. Dr. Ethan Cole, our staff physician, ran every scan we had, but the numbers coming back made no sense to any of our systems. "Her internal bleeding is severe," Ethan said, sweat on his forehead despite the cold. "If she were human, I'd say she has maybe 20 minutes before her organs shut down from blood loss. I don't know how much longer that gives her, given she's not human, but I doubt it's much more." "Then we need blood," I said. "We don't have Threnai blood. We don't even know her blood type. There's no database, no compatibility chart, nothing. Giving her human blood could kill her faster than the injury will." I looked at her. Her eyes were open, watching us, understanding enough of our words to know exactly how bad things were. Her breathing was shallow. Her hand was still gripping the edge of the stretcher, knuckles pale from the effort of holding on to consciousness. "What's your name?" I asked her, kneeling beside her. "Virith," she whispered. "Virith Solkayan." The name meant nothing to me then. I didn't know she was a princess of the Threnai Dominion, one of the most powerful and closed-off alien governments we had ever made contact with. I didn't know that her survival or death in the next few minutes would decide the fate of an alliance neither species had agreed to yet. All I knew was that a person was dying in front of me, and I was the only one in the room willing to take a risk. "Ethan, I want to try a transfusion," I said. "My blood." "Daniel, we have no idea what that will do to her. And if we do nothing, she dies in the next 10 minutes. I'm not asking for approval. I'm telling you what I'm doing." Ethan looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at me for a long second, the kind of look a commander gives when she knows she should stop something, but also knows there isn't time to argue. Do it, she said. But if her body starts to reject it, you stop immediately. I didn't waste another second. I sat down beside the table, rolled up my sleeve, and let Ethan set the line. My hands were steady, even though my heart wasn't. There was no scientific reason to believe human blood would work inside an alien body built on a completely different biology. For all any of us knew, it could kill her instantly, could boil in her veins, could do nothing at all while she slipped away regardless. But I had seen her eyes. I had seen the will to live still burning in them even as her body gave up. I wasn't going to let her die without trying everything I had, including whatever was running through my own veins. Starting the line, Ethan said, voice tight. The first few seconds felt like nothing happened. Vireth's breathing stayed shallow, her eyes fluttering, her pulse weak on the monitor. I watched the thin red line move from my arm toward hers, wondering if I had just made the worst mistake of my life. Then her monitor spiked. "What's happening?" Olivia asked, stepping closer. Ethan stared at the screen, eyes wide. Her heart rate is stabilizing. "Blood pressure is coming up. This isn't possible. This isn't supposed to be possible." Vireth's breathing deepened. Some color, a faint blue-gray warmth, returned to her skin. Her grip on the stretcher loosened, not from weakness this time, but from relief. Her eyes closed, but her chest rose and fell steady and strong. "She's stabilizing," Ethan said, disbelief thick in his voice. "Daniel, whatever just happened, it's working. It's actually working." I sat there, my own arm aching slightly from the transfusion, watching the alien princess breathe easier with every second. I didn't understand what I had just done. None of us did. But I understood one thing clearly, even in that moment. Something had changed, not just in her, in all of us. The wreck outside was still smoking under the frozen sky, the bodies of her guards lying cold in the snow, evidence of a disaster that had almost taken one more life. But inside our medical bay, a princess of an empire we barely understood was breathing steady again, her blood slowly turning a shade lighter, closer to the deep red running through my own veins than it had been an hour before. None of us knew yet what we had started. None of us understood that a simple act of desperation, one soldier offering his blood to save a stranger's life, was about to shake an empire to its foundations. I only knew that she was alive, and that when her eyes opened again a few minutes later, they found mine first, before anyone else in the room. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice stronger than before. "You didn't have to save me." "You were dying," I said. "I wasn't going to just watch." She studied my face for a long moment, as if trying to understand something about humans that no report or briefing had ever told her. "You have no idea what you have just done," she said softly. I didn't. Not yet. But I would find out soon enough, and by then, there would be no going back for either of us. Word of the crash reached the Threnai Dominion within hours, carried by an emergency signal from Vireth's own wrecked shuttle before we had even finished stabilizing her. By morning, a formal contingent from the Dominion had arrived at our outpost, demanding answers, demanding to see their princess, demanding to know exactly what a human medic had put into her veins. I stood in the medical bay as 3 Threnai officials in formal robes surrounded Vireth's bed, speaking rapidly in their own language, their expressions unreadable to me. One of them, an older woman with silver markings across her face, turned to look at me with something between suspicion and disbelief. "You gave her human blood," she said, her standard English precise and cold. "Do you understand what you have done?" "I saved her life," I said. "You may have done far more than that," she replied. "And we do not yet know if that is a blessing, or the beginning of something this Dominion is not prepared for." I didn't understand what she meant. Not that day. But the look on Vireth's face, watching me from her bed with quiet, careful eyes, told me that whatever was coming next was only just beginning. They kept me away from Vireth for 3 days. I understood why, even if I didn't like it. The Threnai delegation had taken over half the medical bay, running their own scans, whispering in their own language, treating me like a suspect instead of the person who had saved their princess. Commander Olivia Grant fought for me every step of the way, reminding them that without my choice, Virith would already be dead. But fear does strange things to people, human or otherwise, and what I had done scared them more than anything. On the fourth day, a young Threnai physician named Kolvath approached me in the corridor outside the medical bay. He was thinner than the others, with dark markings along his jaw instead of silver, and his eyes carried more curiosity than suspicion. "You should see this," he said, waving me toward a private screen. "You deserve to understand what your blood has done." The images on the screen showed comparison scans of Vireth's cellular structure, taken before the crash and after the transfusion. I wasn't a scientist, but even I could see the difference. Areas of damaged tissue that should have taken weeks to heal, according to Threnai medical standards, were already repairing themselves at a rate that made no logical sense. "Her body is healing 4 times faster than it should," Kolvath said. "Her cells are regenerating in a way our own medicine has never recorded. Whatever is in your blood, Daniel, it did not just save her life. It changed the way her body works, even now, days later." "Is that dangerous?" I asked. Kolvath hesitated. "We do not know yet. That is what frightens some of my colleagues. What frightens others is a very different question. Which is, what if it is not dangerous at all? What if it is simply better?" I didn't have an answer for that, and neither, it seemed, did anyone else in the Dominion. Within a day, the news had spread beyond the medical staff. Threnai officials from higher ranks began arriving at our outpost, their ships settling in orderly rows outside, their delegations growing larger with each passing hour. Some came with quiet respect, bowing their heads slightly when they passed me in the corridor. Others watched me the way you might watch something unpredictable, something that might need to be contained rather than thanked. General Threx Kaldor arrived on the 5th day, and the moment he stepped off his shuttle, I understood exactly which side of that divide he belonged to. He was tall, even for a Threnai, with hard gray eyes and a voice that carried authority without needing to be raised. He wore full military dress, decorated with medals I didn't recognize, and he walked through our outpost like he already owned it. "Where is the human who altered the princess's blood?" he said, not as a question, but as a demand. Olivia stepped in front of me before I could answer. "His name is Daniel Hart, and he saved her life. I'd choose your next words carefully, General." Threx studied me the way a predator studies something it hasn't decided to eat yet. "You understand, human, that what you have done cannot be undone. The princess's biology is no longer purely Threnai. Some in our government will call that an honor. Others will call it a violation of everything our bloodlines represent." "I didn't think about bloodlines," I said. "I thought about a person dying in front of me." "That is precisely the problem," Threx said. "Humans think in the moment. We think in centuries." He walked away without another word, but the weight of his warning stayed with me long after he left the room. That evening, I was finally allowed to see Vireth again. She was sitting up in her bed, stronger than I had seen her since the crash, her silver-blue skin healthier, her eyes sharp and alert. When I walked in, she smiled, and for a moment, all the tension of the past few days seemed to fade. "They told me you have been busy defending yourself," she said. "Something like that," I said. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I should be according to every doctor who has examined me," she said. "They tell me my recovery is unlike anything they have documented. Do you know what that means, Daniel? That I got lucky?" She laughed softly, a sound I hadn't expected from someone who, days before, had been closer to death than life. "Perhaps. Or perhaps your blood carries something my people have needed for a very long time, and none of us knew it until now." "What do you mean?" Her smile faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. She glanced toward the door, making sure no one else was listening, before continuing. "There is a sickness in my empire," she said quietly. "It has spread through our youngest generations for the last several years. Our physicians call it the fading. It attacks the blood, slowly weakening the body's ability to heal itself, until the youngest among us simply stop growing stronger. Many do not survive past their 10th year. I felt a chill run through me that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. And your people haven't found a cure? We have tried everything within our own science, she said. Nothing has worked. My own younger brother is one of the ones affected. That is part of why I was traveling when my shuttle went down, Daniel. I was returning from a meeting with our top physicians, hoping for answers we did not receive. And now? Now, my own body is healing at a rate our medicine has never seen, because of a transfusion from a human soldier who refused to let a stranger die, she said. You must understand what that means to me. It means hope, where there was none, but it also means danger, for both of us, because not everyone in my empire wants that hope to exist. Why would anyone not want a cure for a sickness killing children? Vireth's expression hardened slightly. Because a cure means change, Daniel. It means admitting that an outside species, one many in my government still view as lesser, might hold the key to saving our own bloodline. Pride can be a very dangerous thing among my people. General Threx and those who follow him would rather see the fading continue than admit that humans might be the answer. I sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of what she was telling me. This wasn't just about one princess surviving a crash anymore. This was about an entire generation of children, dying slowly from a sickness their own science couldn't stop, and a possible cure sitting quietly in the veins of the very species some of their leaders refused to trust. What do you need from me? I asked. Your blood, again, but not just for me this time, she said. I need your help convincing my people that this is not a threat to be feared, but a gift to be understood, and I need scientists, both human and Threnai, working together before more children are lost. That's not exactly a small request. No, she agreed. It is not. And there will be those who try to stop it before it ever begins. General Threx is not a man who accepts defeat quietly, and there are others like him in positions of far greater power than his. I thought about the guards who had died in the crash, about the sacrifice already made just to get her to safety. I thought about children somewhere across the galaxy, slowly losing their strength to a sickness no one could explain. And I thought about the way Vireth had looked at me in that wreck, gripping my wrist with the last of her strength, refusing to give up even when everything told her she should. Then let's not waste any more time, I said. Tell me everything you know about the fading, and let's figure out how to save your brother and every other child like him. Vireth's eyes softened, something close to gratitude and something close to hope mixing together in her expression. You truly do not understand what you are offering, do you? An alliance like this could reshape the future of both our species. Maybe, I said. Or maybe it's just two people trying to save some kids from dying. The politics can sort itself out later. She smiled again, but this time there was a seriousness behind it, a recognition of just how much weight now rested on both our shoulders. Outside, beyond the walls of the medical bay, General Threx and his allies were already moving, already planning how to stop what had started the moment I chose to save a stranger's life. None of us knew yet how far they were willing to go to make sure that gift never reached the children who needed it most. 2 weeks after the crash, I found myself standing in a room I never expected to enter, surrounded by more Threnai officials than I could count, waiting to speak in front of the ruling council of the Dominion. The chamber itself was carved from pale gray stone, lit by soft blue light that came from no visible source, and every seat was filled with a member of one of the great Threnai houses. Vireth sat near the front, dressed formally now, her posture straight and confident, though I could see the tension in her hands resting on her lap. Beside her sat an older woman with deep violet robes and calm, watchful eyes, introduced to me earlier as Counselor Mira Yesh, one of the few voices on the council who had supported bringing me here at all. You understand, Daniel Hart, that no outsider has ever addressed this council directly, Mira had told me before we entered. What you say today may decide far more than the fate of one sickness. I hadn't slept much the night before. Standing there now, feeling the weight of dozens of unfamiliar eyes on me, I understood why. General Threx stood near the opposite side of the chamber, arms crossed, his expression carved from stone. Several other council members sat near him, their body language mirroring his distrust. It didn't take long to see the room was divided almost exactly down the middle, half curious, half openly hostile. "Let the humans speak," Mira announced, "so that this council may judge for itself whether his claims hold any truth." I stepped forward, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm not a scientist. I'm not a diplomat. I'm a medic who happened to be in the right place at the right time. I gave my blood to save a dying woman because it was the only option I had. I didn't know it would do what it's done. None of us did. And yet here you stand," Threx said, his voice cutting through the chamber, "asking this council to place the future of our bloodline in the hands of your species, based on nothing more than luck." "I'm not asking you to trust luck," I said. "I'm asking you to let your own scientists study what happened, alongside ours, and see if it can be repeated safely. If it can help even one child suffering from the fading, isn't that worth investigating properly?" Murmurs spread through the chamber. Virith rose from her seat, and the room quieted immediately, every eye turning toward her. "I stand before you today because of what this human did," she said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "I was dying. Our own medicine could not save me in time. A stranger, with no obligation to my empire, chose to risk his own body to save mine. That is not luck. That is exactly the kind of courage our own philosophies claim to honor, and yet some in this chamber wish to punish it instead." "Princess," one of the older council members said carefully, "we do not question the courage of the act. We question the wisdom of allowing an outside species to alter the biology of our royal bloodline, and potentially our entire population." "Then question it through proper study," Virith said. "Not through fear. My own recovery has already proven this is not poison. Let our physicians and human physicians work together, under careful watch, and determine the truth before condemning a discovery that could save thousands of children." The debate that followed stretched for hours. I stood mostly silent, answering questions when asked, watching alliances shift and tighten across the chamber. Some council members seemed genuinely moved by the thought of curing the fading. Others, led quietly by Threx, seemed more concerned with what it would mean for Threnai pride if a cure came from human blood rather than their own science. In the end, the council reached a fragile agreement. A joint research team, human and Threnai scientists working together, would be established under strict secrecy, with Virith and Councillor Mira overseeing its progress. Threx and his allies voted against it, but they were outnumbered, at least for now. "This does not mean the matter is settled," Threx said as the chamber began to empty. "It means it has only just begun." I caught Vireth's eye across the room, and the look she gave me told me she understood the warning as clearly as I did. Over the following weeks, the joint research effort moved quickly. Dr. Ethan Cole led the human side of the study, working alongside Kolvath and a small team of Threnai physicians handpicked by Mira for their discretion and skill. I found myself pulled into meetings more often than I expected, partly because my blood remained the central subject of every test, and partly because Vireth insisted I be kept informed of every development. The early results were staggering. Samples of my blood, when carefully processed and combined with existing Threnai treatments, showed the ability to accelerate healing in damaged tissue samples taken from children suffering the early stages of the fading. It wasn't a cure yet, not fully, but it was the first real progress anyone had made in years. "There's a specific protein in human blood," Ethan explained to me one evening, exhaustion clear on his face after another long day of tests. "Something Threnai biology doesn't naturally produce. It seems to trigger accelerated cellular repair in a way that interacts perfectly with their own regenerative systems. We still don't fully understand why it works, but it works." "How close are we to something that could actually help kids like Vireth's brother?" I asked. "Closer than I expected, honestly," Ethan said. "If we can stabilize a synthetic version of the protein, one that doesn't require constant transfusions from you specifically, we could have something ready for controlled trials within a couple of months." It was the first time since the crash that I felt something close to real hope. Vireth's brother, a boy I had not yet met, along with countless other children across the Dominion, might actually have a chance because of what had started as a desperate decision in a burning wreck. That hope didn't last without challenge. 3 days after Ethan's update, one of the research labs experienced what officials called a containment failure. A fire broke out overnight, destroying several months of collected samples and data before the automated systems could suppress it. No one was injured, but the timing was suspicious enough that Olivia ordered a full investigation immediately. "This wasn't an accident," she told me the next morning, her expression grim. "The fire started in the exact section storing your blood samples and the synthetic protein research. Nowhere else in the lab was affected. You think someone did this on purpose?" "I think someone wants this research to fail before it succeeds," she said. "And I think we both know who might benefit from that." I thought of Threx standing in the council chamber, warning us that the matter was far from settled. I thought of the allies surrounding him, their expressions hard and unmoved even as Vireth spoke about saving children's lives. When I told Vireth what had happened, her expression didn't show surprise, only quiet anger. "I was afraid of this," she said. "Threx does not act carelessly. If he is responsible, this was only meant to slow us down, to test how determined we truly are before he takes more direct action." More direct meaning what? Vireth met my eyes, and for the first time since I had known her, I saw real fear behind her calm expression. "Meaning the next attempt may not simply target research data," she said quietly. "It may target the people carrying out the research. That includes you, Daniel, and it includes me." Outside the research facility, guards were already doubling their patrols, unaware that the greatest threat to the project might come not from outside the Dominion, but from within its own most powerful circles. Whatever Threx was planning next, both of us understood that the fire had only been a warning. The real danger was still ahead of us. The attack came exactly 9 days later, during the one event none of us had thought to guard closely enough, the public unveiling of the early research results to the wider council. Vireth had insisted on presenting the findings herself, standing before the same chamber that had reluctantly approved the joint research weeks earlier. Counselor Mira stood beside her, along with Ethan and Kolvath, ready to explain the science behind the progress we had made. I stood near the back of the chamber, close enough to watch, far enough to stay out of the political spotlight, exactly the way Olivia had arranged it. The moment Vireth began speaking about the successful early trials on damaged tissue samples, the lights in the chamber flickered once, then died completely. Screams broke out in the darkness before I even understood what was happening. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, dim and red, revealing chaos already spreading through the chamber. Smoke poured from a section near the entrance, and armed figures in dark clothing moved through the crowd with clear purpose, cutting toward the front of the room where Vireth stood. "Get down!" I shouted, already moving. I reached her just as one of the attackers raised a weapon toward the stage. I tackled Vireth to the ground behind an overturned table as the sound of energy fire cracked through the chamber, striking exactly where she had been standing seconds before. "Stay low," I told her, my heart pounding as more shots rang out overhead. "Daniel, watch out." I turned in time to see another attacker closing in from the side, weapon raised. Years of combat training took over before conscious thought could catch up. I grabbed a fallen chair, swung it hard into the attacker's arm, knocking the weapon aside, then drove my shoulder into his chest, sending him crashing backward into a stone pillar. He didn't get up. Around the chamber, Threnai guards were finally responding, engaging the remaining attackers in short, brutal exchanges. Ethan pulled Kolvath behind a fallen support beam, both of them unharmed but clearly shaken. Counselor Mira, despite her age, had managed to reach cover as well, though her robes were torn from a near miss. "How many are there?" I asked Vireth, keeping my body between her and the chaos. "I don't know," she said, breathing hard, "but this was planned. Someone knew exactly when and where to strike." The remaining attackers were subdued within a few tense minutes, though not without cost. 2 guards were killed defending the chamber, along with 3 of the attackers themselves. The rest were captured alive, refusing to speak even under questioning, their loyalty clearly bought or forced by someone with far more influence than street criminals should have possessed. It didn't take long to trace the connection back to General Threx. Evidence surfaced within days, financial records showing payments routed through several disguised channels, all eventually leading back to accounts controlled by officers loyal to Threx's faction. It wasn't enough for immediate arrest, not against someone with his political power, but it was enough to bring the matter back before the council with far greater urgency than before. Threx, predictably, denied everything. "This is a convenient accusation," he said during the emergency council session called to address the attack, one clearly designed to remove a political rival under the guise of justice. "The evidence speaks for itself, General," Mira said coldly. "Financial records do not lie, even if you continue to." "Careful, Counselor," Threx warned. "Accusations without absolute proof could easily be turned back upon those making them." The chamber grew tense, factions once again dividing along familiar lines. It became clear, watching the debate unfold, that removing Threx through political means alone would take far longer than any of us had time for, especially with the research now paused indefinitely due to security concerns following the attack. That night, Vireth called a private meeting in her quarters, attended only by myself, Ethan, Kolvath, Olivia, and Mira. The mood was heavy, exhaustion and frustration clear on every face. "We cannot continue like this," Vireth said. "Every step forward is met with another attempt to destroy what we are building. If we wait for the council to remove Threx through proper channels, more children will die from the fading before that ever happens." "What choice do we have?" Ethan asked. "We can't exactly force the council's hand." "Perhaps we can," Mira said slowly, an idea clearly forming behind her calm expression. "Threx has accused this project of being unproven, unstable, a danger built on human interference rather than genuine science. What if we prove him wrong, completely and publicly, in a way no one in that chamber could deny?" "How?" I asked. "A trial," Mira said. "A formal demonstration, conducted before the full council, showing the treatment working on an actual case of the fading, not simply damaged tissue samples in a laboratory. If we can show real results, on a real patient, Threx's accusations lose all their power." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of what she was suggesting settling over all of us. "You're talking about testing this on an actual child," Olivia said carefully. "That's an enormous risk, Mira. We still don't have a fully stabilized treatment." "I understand the risk," Mira said, "but consider the alternative. If we continue hiding behind laboratory results, Threx will continue delaying and sabotaging until the political cost of stopping him becomes too great for anyone to bear. We need something undeniable." Vireth was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant, before she finally spoke. "There is one child I would trust with this decision before any other. My own brother, Kellen. He is already in the later stages of the fading. Our physicians estimate he has, at most, a few months remaining." The room grew heavier still. "Vireth," I said gently, "are you sure about this?" "No," she admitted, "but I am sure of what happens if we do nothing. Kellen is dying regardless. If there is any chance this treatment could save him, and prove to the entire council that this path is worth protecting, then I would rather try and fail with hope than watch him fade slowly while we argue over politics." Ethan spent the following days working almost without rest, refining the synthetic protein treatment as much as possible before the trial, drawing on every scrap of data collected before the fire had destroyed months of earlier research. I gave blood repeatedly during that time, more than I probably should have, driven by the same instinct that had pushed me to help Vireth in that burning wreck weeks earlier. The night before the trial, I found Vireth standing alone on a balcony overlooking the Dominion's capital, the city lights stretching endlessly beneath the stars. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, joining her. "Would you be able to, in my position?" she said, a faint, tired smile crossing her face. "Probably not," I admitted. We stood together in silence for a while, the weight of tomorrow settling comfortably between us, rather than pressing down like before. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said quietly, "I want you to know that none of this would have been possible without you. Not the research, not the hope my people now carry, none of it. Whatever the Council decides, whatever Threx tries next, you have already given my empire something we did not have before you arrived." "What's that?" "A choice," she said. "Before, we only had the fading and no way to fight it. Now, whatever happens, we know a path forward exists. That alone is worth more than you understand." I didn't have a response worthy of that, so I simply stood beside her, watching the city lights flicker below, both of us silently hoping that tomorrow would bring the miracle her brother, and countless children like him, desperately needed. The following morning, the council chamber was filled beyond capacity, word of the trial having spread through every level of Threnai society. Kellen was brought in on a medical transport, small and frail, his once vibrant blue skin now pale and thin, his breathing labored even with assistance. Seeing him, seeing exactly what the fading did to a child, hardened my resolve more than any political argument ever could. Threx stood near the front of the chamber, arms crossed, his expression carefully neutral, though I caught the faint tension in his jaw as the treatment was prepared before the entire council. "If this fails," he said quietly, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "it will prove exactly what I have warned this council of from the beginning. And if it succeeds," Mira replied just as quietly, "it will prove exactly what you have spent weeks trying to prevent." Ethan administered the treatment carefully, monitored by both human and Threnai physicians, every measurement displayed on large screens for the entire chamber to see. The process took nearly an hour, tense silence gripping the room as Kellen's small body absorbed the treatment slowly, his vital signs tracked second by second. Then, gradually, the numbers began to change. His breathing eased first, becoming steadier, deeper. Color slowly returned to his skin, faint at first, then more noticeable with each passing minute. His mother, seated near the front, covered her mouth with both hands, tears forming as she watched her son breathe easier than he had in months. By the time the final scans were completed, the chamber had fallen completely silent, every council member watching the results appear clearly on the screens above. Kellen's cellular regeneration, the exact marker that measured the progression of the fading, had reversed itself by nearly 30% in a single treatment, results no Threnai medicine had ever come close to achieving. The chamber erupted, not in argument this time, but in astonished murmurs of disbelief and hope. Vireth rushed to her brother's side, embracing him carefully as he weakly returned the gesture, his voice quiet, but clearer than it had been in weeks. "I'm feeling better," Kellen whispered. "Vireth, I actually feel better." Tears slipped freely down Vireth's face as she held him, and for the first time since the crash that had brought us together, I saw her allow herself a moment of pure, unguarded relief. Across the chamber, Threx stood motionless, his earlier confidence completely gone, replaced by something closer to quiet defeat, as council members turned toward him with expressions no longer filled with doubt, but with growing anger at everything he had tried to prevent. The trial had succeeded beyond anything any of us had dared hope for, but as I watched Threx's cold eyes meet mine across the chamber, one final flicker of dangerous resolve still visible beneath his defeat, I understood clearly that this victory, as important as it was, had not yet ended the danger surrounding us. 3 nights after the trial, General Threx made his final move, and it was far more dangerous than anything he had attempted before. I woke to the sound of Olivia pounding on my door, her voice tight with urgency. "Daniel, get up. Vireth's quarters were breached 20 minutes ago. She's gone." I was moving before she finished the sentence, pulling on my jacket as we ran through the corridors toward the security command center. Screens showed chaotic footage from the palace grounds, guards lying unconscious near a service entrance, a transport ship missing from its usual docking bay. "Threx," I said, though I already knew the answer before Olivia confirmed it. "His personal shuttle left restricted airspace 12 minutes ago, heading toward the old research outpost near the northern mountains," Olivia said. "Security believes he's taken Vareth as leverage, likely intending to force the Council into shutting down the treatment program entirely, or worse, using her as proof that human involvement brought only chaos to the Dominion." Kolvath arrived moments later, along with 2 Threnai security officers, their expressions grim but focused. "We have a strike team ready to move," one of them said, "but the terrain near that outpost is difficult, and Threx still commands loyalty among certain military units stationed there. This will not be simple." "Then we move fast, before he has time to organize further," I said. Olivia looked at me carefully. "You're not authorized for combat operations here, Daniel. You're a medic, not a soldier." "I was a combat medic before I was anything else," I said, "and I'm not sitting here while Threx uses Vireth as a bargaining chip. I'm going." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then suit up. We move in 5 minutes." The flight toward the northern outpost felt like the longest of my life, tension thick inside the transport as we approached under cover of darkness. Kolvath monitored security signals, tracking faint energy readings that confirmed Threx's shuttle had indeed landed at the abandoned facility, along with a small but heavily armed group of loyalists. We landed a short distance away, moving quickly and quietly through the frozen terrain, the outpost's dim lights visible ahead through the darkness. The strike team split into 2 groups, one securing the perimeter, the other, which I insisted on joining, moving directly toward the main structure where sensors indicated Vireth was being held. Getting inside wasn't easy. 2 guards spotted our approach near the entrance, forcing a brief, tense exchange before they were subdued. Alarms triggered somewhere deeper within the facility, and I knew immediately that whatever advantage surprise had given us was now gone. "Move faster," Olivia said through the comm. "They know we're here." We found Vareth in a secured room near the center of the facility, guarded by 2 of Threx's remaining loyalists. The fight that followed was fast and brutal, training and adrenaline carrying me through moments I barely had time to process consciously. When it ended, both guards were subdued, and Vireth stood before me, hands bound but otherwise unharmed, relief and fury mixing across her face. "Daniel," she said, "Threx is still here, somewhere in the lower levels. He said he would rather destroy everything we built than watch it succeed." "Then let's make sure that doesn't happen," I said, cutting her restraints free. We found Threx exactly where Kolvath's readings suggested, standing in what had once been the outpost's main laboratory, now dark and mostly abandoned. He turned as we entered, a weapon in his hand, though his posture carried more desperation now than the calculated confidence he had shown in the council chamber days earlier. "You have already lost, General," Vireth said, standing firm despite everything she had just endured. "The council saw the results themselves. My brother is recovering. Nothing you do here changes that truth." "Perhaps not," Threx said, his voice tight, "but I can still ensure the cost of that truth is remembered. A cure built on human blood, forced upon our people through fear and desperation. History will remember this as the moment Threnai pride was sacrificed. History will remember it as the moment children stopped dying from a sickness no one else could cure," I said. "Whatever you believe about pride, that's the truth that matters." Threx's grip tightened on his weapon, and for a tense moment, I genuinely believed he intended to use it. Then, slowly, something in his expression shifted, the desperation giving way to something closer to exhaustion. "I truly believed I was protecting something important," he said quietly. "Perhaps I was simply protecting my own fear of what change might mean." He lowered the weapon, and Threnai security officers, arriving moments later, took him into custody without further resistance. Whatever punishment awaited him through proper Dominion law, his attempt to stop the cure through violence had ended, finally and completely, in that abandoned laboratory. The following weeks brought changes faster than any of us had expected. With Threx's faction publicly discredited, The Council fully approved the continued development and distribution of the treatment across the Dominion. Kellen's recovery continued steadily, faster than even Ethan had predicted, offering undeniable proof to skeptics that remained after Threx's downfall. Word of what had happened, a human soldier's blood curing a sickness that had haunted an entire empire, spread quickly beyond the Dominion itself. Other species within the wider Alliance networks began reaching out cautiously, curious what else human biology might be capable of, a question that would likely shape diplomatic relations for generations to come. 6 months after the crash that had started everything, I stood once again in the same council chamber where Vireth had first defended my actions before a room full of skeptical Threnai officials. This time, the atmosphere was entirely different. Instead of suspicion, the room was filled with quiet respect. Representatives from across the Dominion gathered to formally recognize the joint Human-Threnai Medical Alliance that had grown from that single desperate transfusion months earlier. Vireth stood beside me, dressed in formal royal attire, her recovery long complete, her strength fully restored. Kellen stood nearby as well, healthier than I had ever seen him, laughing quietly with Kolvath about something unrelated to the formal ceremony taking place. Difficult to believe this all started with you making an unauthorized medical decision in a burning wreck, Olivia said beside me, a faint smile on her face despite her usual serious tone. Difficult to believe it worked out this well, I admitted. It worked out this well because you refused to hesitate when it mattered most, she said. That's not luck, Daniel. That's exactly the kind of decision this alliance needed, whether anyone realized it at the time or not. Counselor Mira addressed the chamber formally, announcing the establishment of a permanent joint medical research division between human and Threnai scientists, dedicated not only to eliminating the fading entirely across the Dominion, but to exploring further possibilities the discovery had revealed. Applause filled the chamber, a sound that would have seemed impossible in that same room only months earlier. Afterward, Vireth found me on the same balcony where we had once stood together the night before Kellen's trial, the city lights stretching endlessly below us once again, though the weight pressing down on us both felt entirely different now. You could have simply stayed a soldier stationed at a quiet outpost, she said. Instead, you changed the future of an entire empire because you refused to let someone die without trying to help. I just did what anyone should have done, I said. No, she said gently. You did what very few would have dared to do, human or Threnai. That courage deserves recognition, Daniel, whatever title this council eventually decides to give you. I didn't do this for recognition. I know, she said, smiling. That is precisely why you deserve it. We stood together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lights of a city that months earlier had viewed my very existence with suspicion and fear, now standing as living proof of what could be achieved when two very different peoples chose cooperation over pride. In the months that followed, the treatment developed from my blood spread steadily throughout the Dominion, saving thousands of children who, like Kellen, had once faced a slow and certain fate with no hope of a cure. Human and Threnai scientists worked side by side more closely than either species had ever imagined possible, uncovering discoveries about human biology that hinted at possibilities far beyond curing a single sickness. I remained at the outpost, though my role had changed considerably from a simple combat medic to something closer to a bridge between two species learning, slowly and carefully, to trust one another. Vireth and I continued working closely together, our partnership growing into something neither of us had expected the night her shuttle crashed into the frozen ground outside our base. News eventually reached us that other alien governments across the wider Alliance networks had begun quietly requesting access to human medical researchers, curious whether the same unexpected properties that had cured the fading might hold answers to challenges within their own populations as well. What had started as a single desperate decision to save one dying stranger was slowly becoming something far larger, a shift in how the wider galaxy viewed humanity altogether. Standing once again on that same balcony one final evening, watching Threnai children play safely in the courtyards below, healthy and strong, in a way that would have seemed impossible less than a year earlier, I found myself thinking back to that frozen night when everything began. I hadn't known, kneeling beside a dying stranger in a burning wreck, that a single choice to give my own blood would ripple outward this far, reshaping an empire, saving countless lives, and forging a bond between two species that had once viewed each other with nothing but caution and doubt. I had simply refused to let someone die without trying everything within my power to stop it. Sometimes, it seemed, that was exactly enough to change the course of history itself.